Hi kids, George Booth here for what was supposed to be the Dr. Bob show. However, after skimming around on YouTube, I found out there are just way too many Dr. Bobs. So I'm going with the title of my first book, Wet Dogs Can't Fly, one of a three book group of wet animals, the second one being Wet Cats Can't Golf. The third one, which will be out the 1st of December, is Wet Raccoons Can't Fly. Lots of silly idiot things and lots of stories from my bizarre family, like my, is that my telephone again? That could very well be true. But anyway, that's the story. So we're Wet Dogs Can't Fly, but I'm still going to be talking about Dr. Bob as time goes on. So with that, we'll end for right now. I'll be back in a little bit, and the news is next. Breaking news, this just in, the cancel culture is coming for millennials, and you'll want to get skinny jeans on this newly nixed fashion trend. According to Gen Z, skinny jeans are now officially over. The trend was called out on TikTok with videos condemning the body-hugging pants and calling for their prompt removal from all closets in some very dramatic ways. The next trend is expected to be no pants. I found my first dead guy when I was 6, maybe 6.5 tops. Okay, so here's my explanation of finding the first dead guy. I'm 6.5 years old. I go out to play on a Saturday morning after my mother gives me my daily dose of cod liver oil. Anyway, so I'm headed up the side of the house along the hedge dividing our house from the neighbor's house. There's a little split in the hedge, so I go through the split in the hedge and notice on the sidewalk down towards our neighbor's garage, there's a man laying face down on the sidewalk. And I realize that it's probably Mr. Morris, the head of the household next door. Anyway, so I walk over and he's pretty solid, and I think to myself, he's dead. This guy is friggin' dead. So I'm running through my emergency checklist that most 6-year-olds have, which results in, Mom! Anyway, so I head back towards the house, and I'm thinking I probably need to talk to Mrs. Morris and let her know about what's happened to her guy. So anyway, so I knock on the door, and she comes to the door and the sweet smile says good morning and what have you. And then I just told her, I said, I think your guy is dead. And I pointed over in his direction towards the corpse. And of course she immediately got hysterical and started screaming and yelling and what have you. And then another neighbor joined in with more screaming and yelling, and it sounded like an Iranian funeral. Anyway, back at our house, my mother's doing the kitchen dishes, in the kitchen doing the dishes. She looks through the window and all she can see is Mrs. Morris and this other woman screaming and yelling. Keep in mind that she can't see me or the dead body. So alarmed by all of this screaming, I decide to head back into our house. I walk into the kitchen and there my parents are standing, and I tell them Mr. Morris is dead. And they looked at me and the fact that I had a cap pistol in my hand, and they had all kinds of horrible things going on in their heads because they didn't know that Mr. Morris was dead. Anyway, after a lot of cacophony and noise and yelling and screaming, and the police finally came in one of those black and white sort of suburban type vehicles, loaded up the body and took off, because back then no effort was made to resuscitate people. Ambulances were for body transportation. Well, interesting experience, and the lesson is never report a dead guy.
Chapter 2. The Engineers. My best friend in high school was Greg, godfather to my oldest and best man at the first of my several marriages. Greg was clever and devious, with the innate ability to talk anyone into doing exactly the opposite of their long-standing convictions or moral beliefs. He retired after decades of, you guessed it, selling cars. In the end, we were pretty close, and he was one of the funniest people I have ever known. He referred to the shower as the box, the bed as the basket, feet were wheels, and eyes were peepers. If you were blind, you had bum peepers. Greg was always in a situation. In fact, his entire life could be described as an endless stream of situations. He dealt with them nonchalantly, in the moment, with no particular plan in mind. He forgot stuff, like his preschool-age daughter's birthday. So, we were out drinking, and only half in the bag when he said, "Come on, we gotta go." What the fuck? Now what? This was the beginning of another situation. I should have seen it coming. He quickly drove us to a suburban housing project, stopped the car, jumped out, and ordered me to follow. I'd never even been to this place, so I had no clue what the hell was going on. Next came what could only be described as a stupid and tragic event. Greg banged on the door, and his ex answered the door. She was not happy. Not that it matters, but she later moved to Nebraska, married a farmer, and started walking with Jesus. The next to arrive at the door was his daughter. Greg gave his now bewildered daughter cash, a $5 and a bunch of rumpled ones out of his pocket. He implored me to add additional funds to her gift. It was such a disaster. I couldn't wait to escape. Greg tells me that as an adult, she's fine with him, and they see each other on a regular basis, including his granddaughter. As small-town teenagers, Greg and I were often bored and always in search of some activity involving cars, driving, not fixing, alcohol, and a desire to be around girls. As far as girls are concerned, we were a couple of bumbling clowns. That's not to say we didn't have girlfriends. We did. There was no sex involved in any of this. Sex was merely a word. That's not to say there wasn't plenty of desire for it, but acting upon it would have been a whole other proposition. Our larger friend group was a cabal we called the Engineers. To this day, I have no clue where that came from. We were just a loosely connected group of 6 or 7 people, 5 of which formed the core. Cast. Greg. Shortest. Once after school, in his bedroom, he said, "Check this out." He then pulled his pants and underwear down, grabbed the lighter, and lit a fart. Me. Brilliant, top athlete, deep sea diver, mountain climber, notary, gifted author, big Zorro fan. Mike. Tall, lanky, great laugh, prone to violence, liked to punch other members, then would cry and give out hugs, tried to get in bed wearing water skis. Brad. Tallest, quiet type, go-with-the-flow guy, threw up into a bucket from a top bunk one night. John. Group intellectual, actually played an instrument. Malt liquor made him surrender all his sensibilities. Rich. Rotund, club feet, super funny. Steve. Short, club hand and club foot. Brad II. Pilot, ladies' man. Chet. Photographer, nerd, and pretty fine drummer. Bill. Fullback build and tall, mechanic, hapless, official engineer driver, not much of a drinker. Associate members. In terms of being a gang, we were pretty inept. We thought we were just short of being super cool, although being cool had no basis in reality. We did not play sports or any organized school activity. We were best described as class clowns. We were not dorks, however, as we frequently ran with the beautiful people. We never engaged in violence, and if there was a fight somewhere, you could count on us being the first ones out the door. These things were our bond. Oh, and we drank a lot. BBB, bound by beer. Cruising our silly town, population 1,200. Sorry, that's a repeat, but an important detail. There will be a quiz at the very end. One night, we decided to check out the construction of the new Lutheran church. No idea why. As always, I played Greg's perfect dupe and should have known that my dangerous best pal was up to something. My relationship with Greg was straight out of Ferris Bueller, and I was the one being constantly manipulated by Ferris. Upon arrival at the church, he dared me to climb the temporary bell tower. Once I got to the top, he proceeded to ring the bell. Huh? What was that? The police were summoned, but once they realized who they were dealing with, we were shooed away home. Greg's father was the local justice of the peace. Chapter 7. Baudette. This is another slice of the ongoing saga of the engineers. This was perhaps the pinnacle of our twisted adventures. Now, at this point, we were all graduates, and we'd all gone off in different directions. But we agreed that one last act of idiocy was in order, in the grand tradition of stealing turkeys, basketball tournaments, and flying leaps. This could only mean one thing: going fishing in Canada. It made perfect sense, since none of us considered ourselves to be a fisherman, and as far as we were concerned, that was beside the point. Being highly experienced in self-emulation, we agreed that we had met all prerequisites of an authorized engineer activity, which were as follows. 1. Yes, it was an activity. 2. We had a car. The mode of transportation was provided by Bill, who couldn't attend due to a bus activity, regrettably, but offered his vehicle as a testament to his fraternal loyalty. 3. We had Colt 45, 1 six-pack per person per day. It was a 3-day trip, and with 5 people attending, it worked out to 15 six-packs plus 18 spare cans because you wouldn't want to run out, for a grand total of 198 16-ounce cans. That's 3,168 ounces, which translated to about 25 gallons. That should have covered it, but seeing as that this was the final trip, we added bourbon, whiskey, peppermint schnapps, vodka, and a 6-pack of Coke. We weren't animals. 4. We were going somewhere. Specifically, we were crossing from Baudette, Minnesota to Rainy River, Ontario. What else did we need? Even better, it was only a quick 6-hour drive. We planned our departure so we would be crossing the Canadian border at 1 a.m. Back then, the crossing into Canada was more of a checkpoint than anything else. No documents, nothing that I can remember. We just told them where we were going. Of course, we first had to figure out how to transport all of the alcohol. It seemed that putting all of that brew into the trunk didn't make sense, so we opted for stashing it under the back seat. Bill's vintage of car had a lot of space underneath the back seat. In this case, our boozy cargo didn't quite fit, so the balance ended up under the front seat. This was all well and good, providing you didn't actually sit on any of the seats. The worst was the middle seat in the back. It was so bad, but we had to rotate who sat there. It was like sitting on a pile of pool balls.